Today I have a conversation with Justene Catchon, a mother of three, naturopath, Ayurvedic Facilitator, an all-round beautiful woman who cares about the way we practice postpartum care. Justene shares her personal experience from preconception to postpartum and how women are held and supported after birthing a baby in the country in which she lives, which is Malaysia. Traditions such as a confinement nanny, massage, belly binding, herbs, and specific foods are all normal practices, and the mother is revered for her role in bringing life into the world. In this conversation, we delve deeper into the benefits and practice of traditional postpartum belly binding. We then introduce a special project that Justene and I are collaborating on, which is an Ayurvedic postpartum belly binding online training aimed at both birth and postpartum professionals, as well as mothers and their partners who would like to include this beautiful ancient practice into the care of the mother. To keep updated on the progress of this offering, please reach out to either Justene or myself. We can't wait to share more. And if you are a Sydney-based mother or mother-to-be and would like to experience belly binding firsthand, please reach out to me at Motherhood with Katura. Enjoy this episode. Hello, Justene. So lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up and what sort of background do you have?
So I grew up on an island off of the coast of Brisbane called North Stradbroke Island. It's a very beautiful island and very kind of simple and nature-centric childhood I had, which I think inspired me to always have a deep connection to plants and nature, actually, and probably set me on the path towards studying naturopathy.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Yeah. So where did that take you?
So I started out studying aromatherapy because when I first finished high school, it was, that was a while ago, and there was no way to get into study naturopathy unless you paid it up front. And my mum didn't, go for that. So I kind of staggered my way into it. I did aromatherapy while I was working. And then by chance, the government all of a sudden did this HEC-sponsored program to get into naturopathy. So I studied naturopathy. At the same time, I was really into, because of the aromatherapy, making potions. So I did a skincare formulation, just a basic one at that point. Yoga teacher training, Ayurveda, all these things, they kind of fed off of each other. Took a pause on my naturopathy, worked in the cosmetics industry for maybe a good 5 years, and then came back and finished off my naturopathy. It took me a long time to complete the degree, actually, while I was doing small courses throughout it. So it was, a deep dive into all the holistic therapies and working out what worked best for me. And at the end of it, ironically, realizing that what treated my own gut health issues and my own nervous system issues was less naturopathy and more Ayurveda. So still, the foundations of biology and physiology that I got from naturopathy are essential, but there was something missing in the overall picture that I couldn't treat myself and I couldn't get really better because I had a lot of digestive problems until I saw a really, really good Ayurvedic practitioner, which led me on that path as well.
Okay, all right. So maybe just for those that are not quite sure what those terms mean, what's the difference between naturopathy and Ayurveda?
Yeah, okay. So naturopathy coming more from a Western herbal medicine perspective. We do a lot of nutrition. So at the start, I was doing a double degree of nutrition and naturopathy. So it's nutrition based as well as Western herbal medicine. Still treating the whole, really getting to the root cause of symptoms, which is excellent. But there can tend to be some rules which are specific and you feel that they might be able to fit into many people. In Ayurveda, because it's a really ancient medicine and it's still same thing, you've got aspects of diet and herbs, but it was more individualized in the protocol. So when you're treating somebody, you're really taking into account the elements and many other aspects of who that person is and how they were born into the world, not just how they're presenting at that moment. So one is an Indian-based medicine, one is Western herbal medicine, and the Indian medicine, like Chinese medicine, is about 5,000 years old. So it's very old, a lot more time for it, to have evolved compared to Western herbal medicine, which is relatively, as recorded, relatively young form of medicine.
So fascinating. So does that mean that you went to India to be treated, or did you find an Ayurvedic practitioner here in Australia?
Actually, not India. I went when I first, I don't know what came first. Yeah, it was Malaysia, actually. There was a doctor from Tamil Nadu, from the south of India, that I went to. I did experiment with different Ayurvedic practitioners in Sri Lanka, but there was a particular doctor in Malaysia that really just was so grounded. And it takes away actually this idea that you have that this holistic medicine is airy fairy or hippy dippy. This is like a suit and tie wearing person who has studied for like 8 years to get his degree. And then, he's a senior with specialities and has traveled the world. So it's like inspiring and grounded. And seeing him was the turning point. I did have to come home to Australia then, and I did find a good Ayurvedic practitioner who was also a naturopath. He had studied both in Byron. And that just further cemented for me, okay, this is what really works for me. It's not just this, you've got to be on a clean diet, eat salads, do all these things. It was like, hang on, no, what's going on underneath? What can we really digest? Really peeling it back. And looking at rebuilding the body and, rebuilding your energy levels, really treating things, not throwing more superfoods at it, which is at those days, I'm not sure we're naturopathies at now, but we were just obsessed with superfoods and throwing more and more health foods into a body. But if the body can't digest it and there's not much going on, it's almost pointless. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I see where you're coming from. Now, I've always found with my health issues that I've always been thrown a lot of supplements, but
exactly. And expensive supplements,
expensive supplements. And I've appreciated my work with naturopaths. There's been a lot of good done for me too. But if your body's not actually strong enough or doesn't have the integrity to handle those supplements or even to absorb them, I think I've spent a lot of money really just to put it down the toilet, to be honest. So it is true, like the body is so much more complex than what we might think, like symptom, and this is the treatment.
Exactly. And I do feel that the heart of naturopathy is, traditional Western herbal medicine is fantastic. But when you come at it from that approach again of here is the supplement that you need to have because you have this problem, like you said, there are so many other factors that are getting missed. And I'm the same as you. I was a student working part-time and all my money was going on my supplements,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
and feeling worse and worse. Some other allergy would pop up the next day. All of a sudden, gluten-free, dairy-free, this free, just living on raw food or whatever it was. It was a cascade effect. And yeah, I think that I spent a lot of money and I didn't get the results. And then I went and I did something as simple as peeling it all back and detoxing the digestive system and changing what I eat and how I eat and my relationship with my body and myself and my sleep and my food. And sure enough, taking some herbs, because herbs are supportive more so than supplements, which are often synthetic.
mm,
Um, and but the herbs were relatively low cost.
yeah.
It was like, oh God, is that all this is going to cost me?
Mm.
And a lot of it was taking ownership. For the first time, I was like, all right, like I'll boil up these spices myself. I'll make this soup. I'll do this khichdi. I'll make these things. And starting to realize that we get sold this idea that health is outside of the home. We've got to spend a lot of money and do a lot of things to get well. But actually, a lot of things which make you well are really low cost and easily accessible. And they start with how you choose to, stock up your pantry, really, with spices and legumes and different, things which make you well and feel well.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. So Let's fast forward a little bit because I know you live in Malaysia now. So obviously there's a bit that's gone on in between. You've become a mother, haven't you? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. So after my at the time boyfriend and I were in Malaysia, we had this lovely time. He was working here. We did go back to Australia, but I really had that time of my life in Malaysia, and I loved having access to the Ayurvedic clinic, and I loved my lifestyle and my feeling of well-being. So when he got an opportunity to go back there, we moved back here. We did get married. I became a mum here, and I was really fortunate to experience preconception care and pregnancy care with the support of an Ayurvedic doctor. So this whole kind of conscious conception plan, also traditional Chinese medicine. I was here, so I took advantage of everything. And then my husband exposed me to the whole world of having a confinement lady, a postpartum lady that came and did massage and binding and steaming and cooking and support, which at that time, so my son is 11 next week, was really unheard of back home in Australia. And I just felt like, whoa, this is such a privilege. I did it again with my second child, and I managed to have a free birth with her here because I was a little bit disappointed in the first birth that I'd had. It was okay, but I was like I was really diving into the world of liberated birth at the time. So I had my second child, and then we moved to Saudi Arabia, which was a different experience in itself. And then we've just come back here, which is very exciting for me. And actually, yesterday I took a few women to the Ayurvedic hospital for a bit of a tour and for them to meet the doctor and so forth. It's just such a privilege to be back and having access to that kind of really incredible care and herbs and the whole lifestyle. So it is a privilege. But now I have 3 children. I had one more child in Saudi.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, that must just feel like a dream come true for you, is that the way that you started off in life, having that, strong interest in all things natural and all things health and well-being. And now you've just been able to continue it and really embody that in the world of Ayurveda in a country that supports that form of medicine. It must just feel, yeah, as you said, such a privilege, but really it just must feel amazing.
It does. And life is not always like this. We're doing this all the time. And living in Saudi Arabia, I didn't have access to anything. And I was always like, oh, goodness me, we would try to travel and get out and so forth. But it's a really different culture and a really different climate and a really different environment. And I mean, there isn't even naturopaths in Saudi Arabia. There was only Western medicine. And so I know what a privilege it was, and then how exciting it was for me to come back and to be, okay, again, closer to Australia, because it's important, for the kids to be able to close to their grandparents and so forth. But to also be back in this, like I said, just yesterday, I wasn't feeling well. Um, just stuff going on, and I needed to really get back on top of it. But I don't have to do it alone. It's not, the whole thing is that we always feel like I've got to heal myself or something. No, hang on. It's really accessible for me to bring a couple of friends, go in. I can introduce them to this, way of communicating at ease and free with a really, dedicated practitioner, getting back on track and resetting myself. Because if I don't reset myself, I can't parent the same way. Do you know? And I think that was the whole purpose of Ayurveda for women, or taking care of women. So there is a branch of Ayurvedic medicine that is purely for motherhood, because essentially the ancient wisdom understood that if we don't support women, we don't support them in their motherhood role, what kind of a generation is going to be raised? So yeah, it's a pretty big topic, but
I know it's hard to know sometimes where we should take this, because we could easily go off on many branches of,
yeah, exactly.
ties into what work that you do and I do. But you have sort of alluded to the Ayurveda for motherhood, and I know postpartum is also a big way in which Ayurveda supports mothers. So tell us how your background and your personal experiences and your life there in Malaysia has lended itself to the work that you do now and the business that you have now in supporting women.
Yeah, so as I said, after my firstborn, and I had this incredible postpartum experience, pregnancy, postpartum, and again with my second child, who is 8. When after I delivered her, I just kept in contact. Some of my friends were starting to have children then back in Australia, and they were having this really drastically different experience. They were kind of giving birth and then back at the supermarket 2 weeks later, pushing the trolley, kind of having to hold the space for other people. And I was like, whoa, that's so opposite of the mindset here. The mindset here amongst all the communities is that women are had to be super supported and really encouraged to rest. I mean, it's an incredible time of rest and recovery, and they barely leave the house, and there's just so much support going on. And so I said to my husband, I would like to offer, this kind of sense of having a ritual for mums. Back then, there wasn't that many postpartum doulas. I didn't know of it. There was more, it was birth doulas that was really, more widely known. So I created a range that I worked with the doctor here in Malaysia. He helped me design oils for each constitution. And then I worked with local ladies here to get the batik cloths, to get bengkungs. Using my own wisdom and from my own naturopathy practice, I created teas and I created kits for people for postpartum and put it out into the world. And so it's, I think, 6.5 years later, it's still going. Over the time, some things have been refined, but really the essentials that I launched with is what is the most important thing: the belly binding, the oil, um, there was a perineal spray, and so forth. So I kept that business afloat throughout having kids and moving countries, and it hasn't been easy, but it's just that so many women want to have that time for themselves. And I think the more that awareness spread, the more people, something gets out of stock and they reach out and they say, when is this back in stock? And I go, okay, I can do this. Even though I'm a mum of 3, I'll keep going. I'll keep going because it's a ritual and a product that is needed when people sometimes can't afford a postpartum doula, or they want a postpartum doula doesn't have these tools, so it's creating that time where they know they've got care for themselves. And even in Saudi Arabia, I had friends have children and I was able to, set them up with all the products, and it was something they couldn't even comprehend, so it's been rewarding.
Beautiful to be able to share that skill and that tradition and that practice with women all around the world.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Which I have to acknowledge is because of the Indigenous kind of way of life here. And it's really a South Asian, Southeast Asian practice that, you know, inspired me. And I just always want to say, like, I'm sharing that on, it's just that I kind of brought it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really honoring and respecting those that have come before us, and
Definitely.
all the cultures that treat birth as not just an event, but a real transformation and a real rebirthing of a woman as well as a mother, and very much revering that. Instead of the mindset we often have over here is that as long as the baby's healthy, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we acknowledge that that's just um, quite sad that as a society, that's the message that we've gotten in the Western world. And so I think that that drives you and I to keep going and keep sharing this wisdom with women, even when we know that it can feel like a big load, because as you said, there's not a lot that are sharing it.
Yes.
But we want to keep going and keep passing this on, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. It does feel like sometimes what I do is so incredibly niche that if I meet people and they're like, "Oh, what's your business?" I try to explain it and they're like, "Oh," because as you said, unless you
Nice. They say that's nice. What's
yeah,
that?
that's nice, exactly. So it's like you're either a birth worker or a passionate, informed mom, or might be a grandmother. A lot of the time, grandmothers are the types that reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I want to give this to my daughter." Maybe it's something they didn't get to experience, or maybe, you know, and you feel like, oh, this is this is what whenever I write to a customer, they might be like, what day do I use this? First, I'm like, hey, congratulations, you've gotten through this, or, wow, how are you doing? How's your postpartum? And you can start this when you like, but it's like, hey, this is not another thing on your to-do list. This is not a must do. This is like a mindset of support and nourishing and taking care of yourself and pampering yourself. Because as I said earlier on, if we take care of ourselves, you can really settle into that role, whether you're a first time mum or a third time mum or a seventh time mum. You need that support. You need to feel taken care of. You need to have rested enough, because people always think that the newborn days are the hardest days. Really? She's kind of like they sleep a lot in the newborn days. I know that they wake a lot, they sleep a lot. Things shift after that first 40 days, actually. And you're going to need more and more support. And as you and I both know, my children are now school age children, your children are heading into kind of adult life. It never stops. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so it's really important that we get that reinforcement in that first, as the famous quote from Isha Oakes is that the first 40 days can determine in some ways our next 40 years. And it's not to
Yes.
scare anybody, it's just to show the importance and the value of looking after yourself in that time, because you're going to need it later on in your in motherhood through all the different stages, and as a woman too, as you enter the different stages of your life and your hormonal stages. So yeah, so crucial. So you've focused on belly binding, so that's something that's how I met you, which is so beautiful. Like, that's where we appreciate Instagram, don't we?
Yeah, it's
Well,
true. Actually, that's
yeah, for the ability to find like beautiful women like yourself, and I source my belly binds and my oils from you because I think the quality is just so amazing and so true to original traditions. So yeah, so why do you believe that belly binding, that actual practice, is something that is truly valuable and necessary?
okay. So I think it's a couple of things. Like, one, women feel very vulnerable about their stomach area after they give birth. It's a really physical thing, a physical transformation. All of a sudden, our belly has expanded, and then after we give birth, it's soft, it's loose, can be a little bit confronting. Do you
Yeah,
know when you
for
first?
sure.
And so, for me, having gone through this experience where straight away they came, they did this massage where they warmed it up, they did this binding, I felt like, oh, that's not such a, I'm not so exposed. I don't feel so vulnerable. There feels something is normal. Something is feeling strong. And because your muscles are generally weakened from the whole process, hey, there's some support there. My lower back doesn't hurt so much. So it's coming at it from a lot of angles. There is just the physical aspect of that supported me, that's helping close it up. I don't feel so self-conscious about my tummy. When everything else is going on and you just kind of want to be at ease, you don't have that kind of extra shock, that can occur. But from the Ayurvedic perspective, what really hit home for me was, it's like, hey, this is an area that has gone through a massive transformation, massive, and you've given birth. There's been a child inside there, and then you're left with all this space, and air accumulates in there, and you get wind and you get belly aches, and that wind comes into your milk and the baby gets, it's this whole kind of thing of air building up. So closing off that space and keeping it tight and keeping it warm is like, it's so grounding. And I remember, I remember firsthand that feeling, compared to if I wouldn't have had done my belly binding, what it felt like. It was like a hug, like something secure. And of course, it reminds you posture, because it's keeping your core tight. It reminds you to not do this when you're breastfeeding, to sit up straight, to feel proud, and to keep your spine strong. It helps relieve that kind of feeling of building up of fluid that happens. So we do get a lot of fluid after you give birth, and it does have to come out. So putting a little bit of pressure on the skin helps that kind of push that fluid into the interstitial fluid, and to help kind of relieve that swelling. So I think for me, it was something tangible that I could easily share with others. hey, whoa. And I've got to be a little bit honest, I'm a bit vain. It was an aesthetic thing. It was like, oh my God, I really bounced back through the
Mm,
process of having this belly binding done. It was
mm.
like, and I had friends who didn't do the belly binding and who had the abdominal muscles tore and so forth. And they were like, I really wished that I did that because it just that little bit of extra support, that little bit of extra kind of, tucking in and toning because you're paying attention to a soft tissue area every day by massaging it, every day increasing the circulation. So that means the blood is coming, it's taking away stagnation, it's helping to reduce the fluid, break down, any sort of fatty tissues and so forth. So it's layered, but it was just something that you could offer to women. And most women want to feel good after they give birth.
Yeah.
They just do. They don't want to feel like meh. So it's something that's kind of like, hey, here's my little ritual. I'm putting this on every day. I feel secure. It supports my digestion, my posture, my spine. It's helping shrink my tummy. So there's so many things coming in from it, but trying not to get stuck on the physical, although that is a really big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of women just describe it as a big warm hug as well. So from an emotional,
I
perspective,
literally have reviews on my website that say
that
that.
say that, and I've had a lot of
Yeah.
people say that to me.
Yeah.
Is it just because, that saying about everyone's holding the baby, but who's holding the mother? And that actually literally feels like a physical hug where you've got something embracing you and you've got that real support that you feel
So
very,
true.
yeah, very supported and very stable, even emotionally and mentally. So,
It definitely plays a part, and you can be feeling you will feel very vulnerable after you give birth. It's inevitable. You will feel vulnerable emotionally, energetically, everything. And having someone ideally come and really bring things together for you and do a nice tight binding and giving you that strength there. If something comes into you, you feel that support. For me, if my doula wasn't there, my husband would do my binding. He was like tightening it up so strong. I'm like, whoa, whoa. And there was something in that little ritual of us together. The baby would be on the bed, just whatever. And my husband would focus on me. And you go, oh, that's right. We're a couple, it's not just the baby.
wonderful, what a lovely bonding moment.
Yeah, it was. It stuck with me for life because, birth can be a bit funny. You look at your husband afterwards and go, oh, whoa, that
Who
was,
are you?
yeah,
Do
who
I
are
know
you?
you?
Why did I go through that?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
a lot of stuff comes up, and women bear a big load, right? So having that relationship of healing and binding, and then while feeling supported and encouraged throughout that phase as you transition from the day that you give birth, a few days afterwards, so that really early postpartum, to when you start to come back out in the world and you don't need to do binding. It's almost like a security blanket. It's almost like this little tool that has gotten you through that phase.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And, as I said, like we could talk and talk and talk, but I do want to ask one question, if you could briefly cover, because it's something that comes up a lot for me, with women asking, is it too late to get belly binding? Say they're 4 months postpartum or they're a year postpartum, or, I do get that. So how would you respond to that?
That is my number one frequently asked question.
Right. Yeah.
I have I have that saved as a because people email me and message me all the
Yeah.
time from all
Because it's
around the world with that
almost
question.
like a panic, isn't it? Like, "Oh, I've just heard about it. I'd love to do that. Oh, is it too?"
Yeah, like FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Fear of yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say what I say to everyone. It is never too late to take care of yourself. And it's actually never too late. Do you want to know what my grown-up mum asked me for a belly bind when I started the business? She was
Mm.
like, I really feel like I should have done this. So I gave her an oil and I gave her a belly bind. It's never too late. And in saying that, you will see the most dramatic results. Like you'll physically see, whoa, that really was effective if you bind within the first 3 months.
Mhm.
If you bind like within the first year, it's better. As it goes on, obviously, you're not going to have that same benchmark of, hey, I've just given birth. So you might not have the same motivation and inspiration. But it's never too late to do binding. And binding isn't just explicitly for postpartum. Ayurveda does binding after any abdominal surgery. Really, really good after a hysterectomy. Really good after a pregnancy loss. Digestive issues. Some women have told me that they like to reuse their bind when they've got menstrual pains. With castor oil packs or warming oils, and then do the bind up. They feel that their lower back gets support. So binding is not just exclusive to postpartum, but you will see the best results within the first sort of 3 months, and that whole first year. You can take up binding, but I'll say the same thing, which I think deters people, but I'll be really honest. You're not going to see results from binding once. Binding is like anything that when we want to improve our health or wellness, we don't exercise once, or we don't have one healthy meal or one herbal tea. So I'll be really honest that you should keep your bind on for 12 hours, and you should bind for a minimum of ideally 4 weeks, but it's really 4 to 6 weeks. You should bind every day. And if you're finding it hard wearing your bind during the day, you would wear it at night. I got used to even sleeping in my belly bind if I was like, oh, then I don't want my bind when I'm going somewhere that next day or something like that. So it's a commitment. And some people will be like, oh, that's too much for me. And some people will be like, okay, I can embrace this as a ritual, and I can do this knowing that they're going to get the best results for their body and for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and what I'm hearing, it's kind of a life practice. And as women, it's something that we can set up from the outset as a mother too, that I matter, that
Yeah,
my
exactly.
self-care matters. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
And it's like you model that to your kids then,
Mm.
and you model, you're training your husband or your partner, whatever, you're training your partner like, hey, I can't do A, B, C, D, and E if I don't take care of myself first, or if I haven't had that support. So you become attuned to your body, by the way, the more that you allow people to support you and you support yourself,
Mm.
the less likely you are, to get so far out of balance that you're going to need to fall over in order to come back up again.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Which as women, we often learn the hard way.
yeah, definitely.
All right, I'm aware of our time, so let's just jump straight to something really special that we're very excited about that we're working on together.
Yeah.
Would you like to open that conversation? What is it?
Yes. So, continuing on from this talk of belly binding, and that you were using my belly binds, and we were both having so many questions, so many emails, so many inquiries about belly binding. We thought that it would be a really great idea to collaborate and come up with a belly binding course. So ideally, it could be for practitioners, for other postpartum doulas who don't have that skill set or have a lot of questions, want training and want support. But we also thought of women and their partners who maybe don't have access, live remote financially, for whatever reason, don't have access to a postpartum doula, but would like to learn how to do this postpartum practice properly, professionally, safely. So yeah, we decided to work on that together. Bit of a work in process. We both have our own lives going on, but it's exciting to see us get there.
It certainly is. So this is something I think that we're trying to come to completion over the next sort of month or two. Is that right, Justine?
Yeah.
It is a work in progress. You've got your children that are young and still, different health issues, and we've moved home, so it's sort of been extended, but we are getting there. And we are really excited to be able to pass this practice on to so many women and so many mothers. I know personally, I live in Sydney, Australia, and there's not many practitioners that do this practice. And it is something that there's a big demand for. I get lots of inquiries from all different areas, and I certainly can't service all of them. So, looking forward to being able to offer this so that this practice can be more mainstream and not such a foreign thing where we're sort of like, what is this? I've never heard of it. We want it to be like well known that it becomes a normal, natural part of postpartum care.
Exactly, just a standard procedure in a sense, so that we're not constantly explaining it, but also just so people have this, easy access to taking care of themselves or being taken care of in postpartum. We'll have a lot more supported mothers. It's a benefit, that we feel like quite passionate about.
Yeah, yeah. It really is part of our ethos, isn't it? And our vision for women to feel, regardless of where they live in the world and what their circumstances are or their economic status, is that it is accessible for everyone.
Exactly. That was the big thing for me. That was what inspired me to create the brand. Like, it was like, whoa, hang on. We don't all have this, I know that I've been privileged. My life took me in this certain, pathway where I did have access to, but I also married outside of my culture. So this was the norm for my husband. I thought, oh, not everybody has this. Like, but I want my people, to have this time for it to be not so overwhelming, not such a time of, upheaval and disturbance and regulation, sorry, for it to really be a supported period. How can I create something and share that with people so that no matter where they are, they can pick it up? And, that's why I always had the little QR code that you can scan, you can learn how to do things. But there are people who want to go deeper. There are people who want to know, how to safely educate women how to do it. And all of these little questions that come up and little, checks and kind of, having to correct things and so forth, because it just takes time. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it really is just such a great way for add-ons for, particularly birth and postpartum doulas and people that work in the birth and postpartum space, is to be able to offer this practice in addition to what they already offer and all the
that's
beautiful services. Yeah. To give them the confidence that they know how to do it. And as you said, they can do it safely and confidently. So stay tuned. Your business, Justine, is Ibu Ayurveda. I will put all the details of that on the show notes, so if people want to look you up and see what you do, and also we'll be sharing a little bit more along the way on our Instagram accounts, and I think we'll do a couple of lives. Hey.
right.
As we get closer, we're brave enough. And we look forward to sharing more about this course.
Thank you so much. It was lovely having a chat today.
Yeah, always a pleasure. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that it offered something helpful to your own mothering experience. If you are a pregnant woman or know someone who is, head over to my website to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and contact list. And if you'd like to be better prepared for your postpartum, both practically and mentally, purchase the Peaceful Postpartum ebook, a 52-page interactive guide on what you need to know and what matters most in postpartum. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast, and we'll see you next time.